Okay, guys, we have an update here on the vessel that's aground in northern Canada in the Northwest Passage. Time is definitely running out in this situation. Here's the story from the Maritime Executive that was published on the 6th of October, 2025. With the arrival of additional equipment and lightening of the vessel Tamsburg, the operator and the Canadian Coast Guard report a refloating operation is scheduled for this week. The teams remain focused on the safe recovery operation while racing to complete the efforts ahead of the onset of winter weather. The crew of 15 and an ice advisor remain on board the vessel. There is no reports of pollution as the effort enters into its fifth week. The Tamsburg went aground in a remote part of the Canadian Arctic on September the 6th, while transiting the Franklin Strait off the Prince of Wales Island in Nunavut, Canada. The fuel tanks and cargo holds remained intact, although several ballast tanks were damaged. During the first stage of the salvage operation, around 4,000 tons of cargo, which are carbon blocks for industrial use, were transferred from the Tamsburg to two other vessels that were brought in to aid in the operation. The vessel's operator reports that the goal was to reduce the draft of the grounded vessel, and if the efforts are unsuccessful, the resources are available to remove additional cargo. Additional equipment and personnel reached the site on October the 3rd, with an offshore support vessel which was brought in from Europe to aid with the efforts. The OSV made stops en route to load additional supplies and provisions before proceeding to the Arctic. The vessel will be able to assist with escorting operations, towing, or potentially ice breaking as the operation proceeds. One of the challenges emphasized during the briefing on October the 6th is the weather conditions in the area. Representatives for Environment and Climate Change Canada and the Canadian Ice Services highlighted that the storm season is beginning in the region. Today they said there are strong winds near the site, but they expected a brief lessening during the week. Strong winds and snow are forecasted for later in the week, but the Canadian Ice Services noted the heaviest ice is to the west of the location. A Canadian Coast Guard vessel remains on site, providing oversight on weather and ice forecasts. The observation efforts vary by the weather each day, while TNT salvage has been retained for the operation. The Coast Guard also used its crew changes as opportunities to bring in additional supplies and expert personnel to the area. The operator notes the vessel as an ice-class hull. The operation this week will reduce the water that flooded into the empty ballast tanks while the vessel grounded in an effort to refloat the ship. If it is successful, the vessel will undergo an inspection to determine the level of damage. The efforts are identifying a port of refuge. The goal is for the ship to sail under her own power, but resources are there if assistance is needed. The course out of the Arctic is still being discussed and will be based upon the weather and the ice conditions. The company said that there is a contingency plan if they cannot free the vessel before the onset of winter and ice forms to prevent the removal of the ship. However, the focus is on refloating the vessel, and they are confident that the Tamsburg can be removed before conditions prevent the exit from the region. The timing of this week's refloating effort and the completion of the removal depends on favorable weather and sea conditions. Canadian law requires that the vessel's owner pay for the salvage as well as repairs and damage to the environment. A spokesperson for the company reaffirmed that the operator maintains comprehensive maritime industry insurance coverage. The operator highlights that since 2016, it has completed over 50 successful commercial transits of the Northwest Passage. They are working with authorities for an investigation and expect to learn from this incident. The company remains committed to the use of the Arctic as an important sea lane, saying that one incident does not change its overall operations. There is obviously no set date when this has to be done by. It's going to be whenever the drift ice shows up and it can no longer work, and the vessels that are there has no choice but to leave. What happens to the Tamsburg when that happens? I guess she'll be sitting in ice for the next 6 or 8 or 10 months until this opens up again. This shipping lane is only open for a few weeks a year, and that window is rapidly closing. It all depends on Mother Nature at this point. They basically have one chance to get this vessel floated. After that, it's totally up to the ice. Alright guys, there it is. As always, thanks for watching. If you're new here and you like these kind of videos, don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and I'll see you on the next one.